Reverend A.T. Kegler, and today we are going over the fourth petition of the Lord's Prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. And we'll be focusing on two parts in particular. First off, daily, and second off, bread. What do these two things actually mean in the Lord's Prayer? So with that, let's open up our handy-dandy Book of Concord and see what we're working with. So, let's get started. Give us today our daily bread. What is this? Answer. In fact, God gives daily bread without our prayer, even to all evil people. But we ask in this prayer that God cause us to recognize what our daily bread is, and to receive it with thanksgiving. What then does daily bread mean? Answer. Everything included in the necessities and nourishment for our bodies, such as food, drink, clothing, shoes, house, farm, fields, livestock, money, property, an upright spouse, upright children, upright members of the household, upright and faithful rulers, good government, good weather, peace, health, decency, honor, good friends, faithful neighbors, and the like. Before we discuss more Luther, though, I think we should probably go back to the source. This is Jesus' prayer, after all. He's the one who taught us to pray it, and it's recorded in two places, in the Gospel according to St. Matthew and in the Gospel according to St. Luke, Matthew 6 and Luke 11. As we go back to the original Greek, there's a very interesting word choice in this petition. The word is epiousion, and it's got a lot of interesting features to it. As I've said before, my pronunciation is terrible, but here is roughly how the intercession goes in Greek. Ton arton hemon ton epiousion dos hemon semeron in Matthew, or ton arton hemon ton epiousion didou hemon tokath hemeron. So that's Luke. The word epiousion is really tricky. It only comes up in the context of the Lord's Prayer in all of surviving Koine Greek literature. We have no additional Greek language context to figure out what the authors mean from it. So we have to look at the word itself and try to break it apart to figure out what it means. There is one other time it shows up, probably, actually. There is a piece of papyri, an old list of expenses, maybe a receipt or something, in which epiousi something is used in a list of things along with chickpeas and straw. It's not even the whole word, it's cut off. So in that sense, we really need to break the word apart to figure out what it might mean. And as you'll see, there are a few possible ways we can take it. So the first thing we really notice when we look at it is that it's an adjective and that it's modifying bread. We also see that it's a compound word. Epi, the prefix, usually has a sense of imminence, a sense of a thing being upon us, but perhaps not always entirely. There's also ousios, which has a sense of being in a broad sense. Something to come might be one way of putting it. Something upon us is another way. You'll see it's a little tricky. Because of that, there are a few ways in which you can translate it. You could give it a sense of anticipation or the future. Give us today the bread we expect. Give us today the bread we will get. Give us today the bread that is to come. Give us today the bread we'll need. You could also say that this is perhaps the bread of tomorrow, the bread of the day that's coming up. I think that's kind of neat. I think it has a little bit of a hint of the Lord's Supper there, and even more, a little bit of the feast to come. That is, the feast of the kingdom come, the resurrection. So you get a vague Eucharistic and eschatological connotation if you translate it in such a way. You could also understand it in a sense of superabundance. It could be a petition to pray for the double share, perhaps a prayer made with an expectation of generosity. You might also translate it as, give it to us as it comes daily, or as it is appropriate to us. Typically we use the word daily, though, and this we're following the works of St. Jerome, who translated the Bible from Greek, the New Testament from Greek, into Latin. While he was doing that, he chose the word quotidianum, daily. The bread for the day being the bread that's here to help us in the day upon us. I don't think that's an unfaithful translation. I think it's fine. I also think that because Jerome made this choice, it's been the primary way we've been thinking about this prayer for centuries. Not a bad way, but a certain way. Translation is a tricky and faithful affair. It's more of an art than a science, though. You need to be very conscientious about what choices you make and what choices you close off. These words all change a little bit over time and as we encounter them. And all of these senses that I've described do make sense. They all have some degree of legitimacy to them. All of them are in line with the original Greek. What we pray, though, is that the words get done what they need to do. And I don't think any of them necessarily exclude us from the other ones, as long as we try to remain mindful of the other ones too, as long as the other translations also have something to do with our broader faith. Matthew and Luke, as they transmit to us Jesus' words, Jesus' instructions for prayer, choose to use this interesting word and not a different one. As they wrote this teaching down, they chose to use Greek. They didn't choose to add Hebrew as they do at other points, or Aramaic as they do in other points. They didn't choose to use another language to clarify what they meant. And I think this gives us some freedom in prayer and some stuff to think about as we pray ourselves and as we relate to God. At the end of the day, no matter which of those senses you use, which of those translations you choose, it boils down to petition and it boils down to dependence. God, give us the bread. You have the stuff we need. Let us have it. Let us see it. Let us know it. Let us taste it. Let us share it. Once again, we think of a loving child approaching a loving parent. Our Father, Abba. Compare this then to Jesus' teachings on anxiety and about the things of the world. Consider the lilies of the field, the sparrows of the air. No one will gain a single hour in life by worrying about life, etc. That's the important stuff. That's the spirituality that we hand over to God, and in turn we receive all that we have. When Martin Luther is writing the Small Catechism, he's not really concerned with how we translate the word epiousion. He's instead more concerned with helping us appreciate bread. What bread means in our faith life, what bread means in a wider sense. Luther encourages us not to think of just food, but rather all that we have and all that we need. Our shoes, our clothing, our loved ones, our friends. You can see a kind of similar thing here to what Luther was talking about in previous parts of the Small Catechism when he lists out God as the creator of all of our stuff, right? Here we're asked to pray for all of the things that make life doable and enjoyable, the things that we take comfort and strengthen, the things that protect us in day-to-day life. It's also a prayer to protect us from all of the things that would interfere in this. Luther has us pray, when we pray for our daily bread, in this wide sense that includes peace and harmony and justice, good government, prosperity, and wisdom. In the Large Catechism, Luther makes it even more clear that when we pray for bread, it's more than just about the stuff that I put around my ham and cheese this afternoon for lunch. It's also a prayer for civil authority, for government, for good, faithful order, and defiance against disorder, defiance against the things that go wrong. Through civil authority, through government, God provides us daily bread and comfort in life. We don't have security unless governments and civil authorities and civil societies take their responsibilities very seriously. Where dissension and strife and war prevail, everyone's bread gets taken away. Luther then has this great aside, noting that if princes actually took their faith and their jobs as seriously as they needed to, not a single one of them would be making their coat of arms or their flag or their coins or whatever in the image of a lion or a wreath or a sword or an axe or any kind of that posturing fancy stuff. These signs of power, they're not all that good, according to Luther. A loaf of bread is the true sign of a faithful government, because their reign should secure such things for everyone who hungers. In praying for our daily bread, we likewise pray that those who deny daily bread are foiled. Whether it's through using unjust wages, whether it's through economic exploitation, or through bad and unpayable loans, through shifty commerce and market practices, through the maintenance of food deserts in cities or in rural areas. All of these marks of the modern market that make the lives of people less secure are things that we actively pray against, and we do believe that God is working against. Because after all, we pray to God with confidence, not that things remain just the same, but that the hungry eat, that we get our daily bread. So, because we believe that the situation can change, because we believe that God actually wants a better situation, we believe that God is at work in making sure that people get their daily bread. We get to be part of that. It's important for us to also realize that God gives the blessing of daily bread to the moral, to the immoral, and to the amoral. As we've seen with all of God's blessings, they are widely and generously given. What we primarily ask is that we understand that we've received them. So that is, broadly speaking, what we mean when we ask for our daily bread. That the stuff we need, the basic stuff that we could otherwise take for granted, but we would really suffer for if it were gone, that we have an abundance, and that we recognize that this comes from God's hand. Having these things, we can rejoice in the gifts we've been given, turn away from sin and self-interest, and share with those who need it. In doing so, we spread the love, we spread the generosity, we spread the gratitude, we become the answer to prayer, we challenge corruption, and we actually welcome more people to the table. We ask in this prayer, in a real way, just the same thing we asked for in the last one, that God's kingdom come, that we have a part in it. So with that, that's what we pray for when we pray, give us this day our daily bread. Next time, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Thanks for tuning in.